Hi, so weekend blockbuster. I think a lot of you are having a good time, haven't worked very hard during the week, and we'll try to find if you can get a little bit of time up on the weekend, up on Saturday and Sunday, a little bit relaxing time, going around with friends and families. Up into the park. It's an absolute wonderful time of the year right now in Japan. It's Sakura, so it's just absolutely beautiful in Japan. I mean, like I can't think of missing a Sakura in Japan, but this year, unfortunately, I'm out away from Japan and it's missing the beautiful Sakura. Everything just looks absolutely great. It's close and being back in Japan from 2003 all the way, I had a chance to see the beautiful Sakura every year, and this is after quite a long time that I've been missing it out. But not to say that I'll completely miss it. I'm just expecting to come back to Tokyo by the end of this month, and as I would come back, I believe I would get a little bit clear if I would just move down up to the north. The Sakura is there all the way up to the middle of May, and I, if I would have time, I would try to get to northern Japan, which is also home to my family. So apart from being in Tokyo, I mean, like that's when if I would get time, I would just go back there and have some good time if I can manage. But well, coming back to being here today, I would like to speak my perception of India and Japan. A lot of us, those who are back in Japan and also in India and other parts of the world, they're looking at Japan and India vibe very closely. It's been observed by people like you and me, those who are working in this space, reading a lot of news every day up in the newspaper, and then there's another class which is where they were trying constantly to see how they can connect this opportunity in their private space, in their public spaces, and which is very good. If you see back up the way the things is developed in Japan's economic developments post Second World War, you see the lot of things that they have done in Japan, and the way that Japan has contributed to the world has been absolutely outstanding. Their participation with the US, their participation with China was very, very dominating, and they have done absolutely wonderful work throughout the world. But with us, when they had an economic slowdown back in mid 1990s and 1995 and so on, when the Japan started to realize that they would want to change the strategies and in the way they would work with the world, and the Lucas Asia policy, particularly with India being in the center, was an area where Japan was had looked mid 1990s and to the date, today, as we can see that Lucas policy is very important for Japan, where India is just in the center, and they're constantly trying to find out how they could work with India to strategize a better economic scenario for not only Asia, for the world. Here we are working in different spheres. A lot of our friends, those who are back in Tokyo, they are trying to do a lot of events, there are a lot of seminars, a lot of get-togethers. So do us. There are a lot of buyers going up back in India also to see how they can actually actually contribute to the cause of bridging and connecting India and Japan in different spheres. It is just as evident that it will only do when people exchanges become more stronger. When it comes to the bureaucratic part of understanding of the region, which comprises of the geopolitical influence and the confluence of these countries, the economic confluence and the influence of this country, with being India at the heart in Japan's Lucas's policy, is not only been watched. Is watched everywhere. Back in the U.S., so does that I'm in the U.S., and the people are often talking about is when I meet with the educators, the industry associates that I would know in the U.S., they're equally very much closely moving, looking to watch, taking a watch in this developments, and they are very sure that that these two countries will going to an absolutely wonderful work in that part of the world where America is equally looking at finding ways to connect so that they work together in this development in Asia. the Japan's if you look at Japan's development post 1950s, then in 1960s made through, it would just be as evident that Japan has done a lot of technological and economic advancement to the world by contributing to different countries, and much of it was done by sending their expertise in around excellence, which includes science, technology, then investments, creating thousands and hundreds and thousands of jobs all over the world, which includes U.S. as well, where their contribution is quite significantly deep in the automobiles, science and technology areas. In this process, during the development, Japan has very closely worked in with China, also deploying their OEM facilities in China, where through which they would build up things and would distribute to the world, which includes also back to their country. There had been, up until lately, I knew that there had been more than 27,000 OEM of Japan is in China, and that is an outstanding figure. 27,000 is a big number, and much of this facilities had been resourcing Japanese products, being made in China, that is going all across the world, and they're getting sold and given a good thrust to the economic upliftment in Japan. But as and when time, there had been challenges that both Japan and China had faced, and they have been very strategically thinking what they would do, and in this process they have been equally been observant and trying to do a shift in the sharing of the opportunity, and India being Japan's partner. I would say India being Japan's partner, rather Japan and India, they looked at each other to find that opportunity to leverage, so they can make a corridor where they can share the opportunity and extend this to the rest of the world. Mid 1990s, with the Lucas policy, when Japan was trying to find out who or their natural partners would be, and it was obvious India was on the top consideration, being a relation that India and Japan enjoys for thousands of years, went into an advantage with India, which geopolitically, I would say geopolitically, geoeconomically been very well placed in Asia, just in the middle of the world. If you look at the world map on the top, you would practically find India being in the center of Asia and Europe, with absolutely wonderful waterfront that constitute Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, and the Arabian Sea. That gives an absolute wonderful transport and navigation opportunities of trade and commerce, that not only it's just not about being at that region, but it also influences the movements of the trade across the world, being temperate water zone with no obstruction 365 days throughout the year. And this is something that India enjoys through the thousands of years, where it has attracted traders from the time immemorial. If you look back to the world history, of 3, 4, 500 and 1,000 years and 2,000 years back, you will see India as attractive, because India always had this opportunity on the top of being very nicely located, up on Asia, with Himalayas up on the north, and all the seas, with the absolute good protective, country which enjoys an absolute beautiful weather and the resources that the whole world has always had looked as India as a center point where they wanted to come and trade with India. It just as true if you look at the colonialisms in India over the last 300 pre-independence. It's just now the notation was that was the last part of it, when the European entities, Portuguese entities, and some of the other entities, they equally has enjoyed the resources out of India. In the given world in which we live today, which is a newer world, where the world is connected, very, very closely knitted with information technology and things, where the sharing opportunity has become uniform. When I talk about being uniform, as in the past it might not be uniform, there were not equal shares of opportunity, but today the scenario is different, where it's about free navigations and free transportation, free trade free trade, everything we talk about free where everybody can work together, because now the world has become so small that it is just not by boundaries that the country enjoys the benefits. It's just about what we had into the past, but now this boundaries just boundaries by compliances. But then when it looks to trade and commerce, all the countries are working together to see how these boundaries are taken off so that they enjoy the resources, so that they can share it equally for the prosperity of the world at large. Japan in 2000, they came on to shake hands with India when we had this global strategic partners being done. Mr. Bajpayee and Mr. Modi was about that time, they had signed an agreement, global strategic partnership agreement, and this was 19 years today in 2019 that we've been enjoying a time since 2000 where both these countries have worked collectively to shape an Asia so that Asia that they can give to the world. We look back of how this development that has happened from 2000 almost to has been very influencing. At one side, we talk about this, but on the other side, we need to really look into those dots. These are the dots which both of these countries has enjoyed together, putting it up for the one that we see today. Back in 2000, the data will show that there is about 200 some plus companies, Japanese companies were there in India, and that was a long time back, 19 years back. But today, if you go on to that report back in 2019, and if you go to the Embassy of Japan's website, in India, it has a downloadable file that would tell that we engage more than 5,100 plus businesses in India, Japanese businesses in India that are doing work in, that they are doing business in India, and that is so absolutely outstanding. When I say about outstanding, because these are the businesses, those who have gone to India and they are working in India. Even if you look back to these data back in 2010, 2004, we had about 326 Japanese companies in India. So it's been kind of dormant, aside it was developing, but on the other side we've been negligent of not being knowing, and I don't blame for that, because we were passing through a time and space where we are influenced quite much by the Western educations and the confluence of opportunity that we had been sharing with them because of the English language that each one of us speaks and each one enjoys, to which we do even today, and I guess that's going to continue in the future as well. Had been in a way has kept us away from that doors which otherwise we could have connected very well, and I think we've been missing on those dots. And these doors are those doors as to we have to see how we have developed things in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2007, then 2010 and 2011 when we had this FTA, Free Trade Agreement, or the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between Japan and India. And this 11 years would show a figure that we might have not have thought of it very really well deep into that, because at one side it's only 11 years, on the other side from a mere some 220 plus companies in 2000 it went up to almost 2,542 companies 2012, and that's 12 years, not 11 years. So if you look at that span of time of 12 years, it had grown up by almost 1,000% in just about 12 years. We have to really look into this comparatives and competitive analysis when it comes to trade and commerce between India and other nations. And if you look into this, you would find this is an absolutely outstanding thing that we've been missing out at a time when these opportunities are being there, when both the countries are working together to put this opportunity into reality for the people of both the countries and for the world. Back in 2010, as my data indicates, I believe we had about close to some 700 plus companies, and then again in 2012 it went to 2,512. That's still 300% in just about 2.5 years, and this is absolutely outstanding. You look at 2013 data, you look at 2014 data, 2015 data, 16 data, 17 data, 18 data, and in the last 6 years, these data, when we look into these data, we would find that the Japanese businesses, what is the companies of the business? What we mean by business are the subsidiaries that works under these companies. And a lot of these companies in Japan, as you know, a lot of us that we work in Japan, the companies have subsidiaries. So do as well true in India. At one side, we talk about 1,400 companies, but in the 1,400 companies brings in 5,000 plus subsidiaries in India, and this has happened in between 2010 and 2018 from 700 to 5,000, just at nearly 700 plus % in 8 years. Now I want to ask you, each one of you, those who are out there, in India and Japan. If you are actually looking into these figures, putting on papers to see actually what is happening, I have the data as to how India and France had this transport of development in the bureaucracies opportunity through the trade that we do build on this, and that would show figures which I can always draw on this time, and you will see it's a negative, data would prevail, and this can be all brought down from the Ministry of India's Government of India EMEA websites. You can go and you can find the data and the comparatives between India and Japan, India and France, India and Germany, India and US, India and UK, India and Australia, India and Singapore, India and UAE, and all these data are all completely available. And if you draw those data and put those data in front of you, you will find very absolutely and clearly the indicators that will show that India and Japan being strategically not only spearheading and leading this domain in terms of convergence of opportunities to bring it not only to both the countries but to the world on a lot, and the figures will be outstanding. I can always share a data. Like today I have it on my table on my data that is saved. Maybe in my next one I want to show that, and that will reveal mind-boggling figures, because these figures would ask us is to if we are actually really working to the opportunity which these two countries are bringing together. It's good that, as we know, always government is on the top and we are people on the bottom. It's equally as important for us and the people in the bottom to work for it and for the people, those who are taking the directions from the top. It's about people's government. It's not about government's people. Government is there sitting on to tell us, you're the people, see, this is what we are doing for you, and this is what you have to understand. You have to work for it. So it's very important as a people. We have to understand, we have to work. Always we have to remember, it is not about industry first, it's about people first. So we have to work in a way so that we can connect all these people. So if we connect all these people, all of these people will connect the businesses. And when we connect all this business, then we connect the industry, not the other way around. There are a lot of movements happening between India and Japan, where we have these delegations going from India, from CII, ASOCHAM, FICCI, NASCOM, and so on and so forth. Regional industry associations. They could be going to Japan, and they're meeting some of these industry forums, and they are coming back. But the question will still remain: if they would visit and come back, if that does that larger convergence of confluence of this opportunity, which otherwise can be made absolutely wonderful provided we work with the notation of engaging us as combined together as one unit and not fragmented units, we will not succeed. That is just as very clear. When I say it's just a fragment, it's just not clear, because that's where we are putting a bar between each one of us not to work together. So time has come that we must understand this opportunity very, very closely. When I talk about this opportunity, is it about that opportunity? Is the opportunity that I'm talking in context to India and Japan? Look at the AG corridor. Look at the European corridor. The European corridor would reveal an absolute wonderful way as to look how the convergence of FTA between European Union and Japan that has happened back in just about 2 years back in 2017. Is it about some opportunity that both of these countries will enjoy together? It is an opportunity not only between the FTA and not between the European Union and Japan, but it is an opportunity about the European Union, Japan, and India as a center will enjoy together, being European Union enjoying 66% of the world resources by 27 countries. When I say about 27 countries, this is because with the situation that is undergoing the undercurrent of Brexit in UK outside, pushed with 27 countries there, but at one side, that is the case. With another side, those 27 countries are also enjoying Japan's corporations and technology, Japan's corporation and economy, intellectual property, which not only have been enjoying, which not only enjoyed, but all those European countries, this constituent state, which consumes 66% of the world resources. So when we look at today, we look at today as being in context of Japan and India only. But it's just not about India and Japan. We have a larger opportunity waiting for all of us into that corridor that might equally transit to India and work with India and Japan together. And this is going to happen. And that's where Japan's Look East Asia strategy resides. That is where Japan's Look East Asia strategy resides for the AEG corridor, which is the Africa, India, Japan corridor. Now let me explain to you how
that would actually work together. And this is something that we need to understand. I mean, we need to understand very deep inside. We need to understand that very deep inside, because this opportunity is way more deeper than what we are looking, and that's why the think tanks all over the world, they are looking at this, centralizing this opportunity very closely, and some of them are really concerned, and some of them want to be part of it, and which is absolutely good. When we look at how Japan has worked with America and China post Second World War, during the Cold War area, you see that Japan has had all these units. All these units of OEM had been deployed on the Chinese soil. And when we talk about this Chinese soil, that is where they have actually produced the goods, and they have produced these goods, and they have sent this good all over the world, and they have made money out of that, and those money had gone back to Japan, and so does for these products, those that had been made in China were sent back to Japan, where equally the people of Japan, they have bought it for the same amount of money where the Japan was actually selling to another country. So if it was made for 1 won, it was selling for 10 won equivalent in America. It was about the same. It was sold back in Japan, and this had happened over a period between 1960s all the way to 2000, very, very deeply, where Japan was actually had been engaging to manufacture their products and send it all over those. But when we talk about this, we have to also look into the time that it took. It took almost 30 years for the Japanese businesses. When I talk about 30 years, mid 1950s and all the way to 2000, to make this 27,000 OEMs. When I was talking, when I started this discussions, video, I talked about this 27,000 plus OEM, and this has happened over 30 years. In other words, it took 30 years for the Japanese businesses to push 27,000 OEM in China. Now, it has happened in a space and time when we didn't had proper information technology. There was a lot of more manual efforts, there were a lot of more compliances that people had to work in with a lot of time being spent to understand the feasibility of the project being deployed in China, and it took a lot of time. But at the same time, this 27,000 number being very, very big number, it just shows that how focused Japan was, because Japan made a very fast movement in deploying this companies into China for their production facilities. So at one side, it's a big number, as on one side there was no technological advancement that we had in today, like the internet, IT, AI, and all that we talk about. We didn't have nothing. So now imagining having not that nothing, and today we have that, and that is another instigator which is going to instigate and make things move even faster than what it actually had happened between those 30 years when we had this 27,000 Japanese OEMs in the Chinese facility, which has actually resourced products not only for Japan and China, but it resources products for all over the world. If you look back in 2000, when we had this global strategic partner between Japan and India, where Mr. Bajpayee, and he's the modern guru of India, who has actually made this way forward, by understanding the convergence would actually make an Asia prosper, had been to an area is so important that we sometimes have left behind. We didn't realize, because we equally have such engagement with another country. From 2000 and now in 2019, that I'm trying to share my opinions about how things has developed, and you will see that there has been a development of from 200 some plus companies to 5,000 plus company, and that too within the first 18 years. When I say about the first 18 years, the first 11 has been dormant, because there was a time when Japan was looking as to see the feasibility of the project. As a lot of us, we talked about the Kaizen, we talked about a lot of the 5As and a lot of things that Japan would do, and they were actually working on that to see if the feasibility of the project. Unlike 2011, when we had the FTA, the Free Trade Agreement, or the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between Japan and India, if that would have been done a little earlier, say like 2005 and 2006 or 2007 or maybe 2004, today you do not have 5,000 companies, it would be like 10,000 companies. And that's not the case. The case is that we had this in 2012, and we are having this 5,000 companies from a mere 700 companies in 2010 to 5,000 plus company in 2012. That's about 700% increase in 8 years. Now do a simple math and you see what the number would be if it grew exponentially in the next 30 years. In a similar situation where Japan and China has worked to a point they went on to reach to 27,000 OEM in 2000 by mid 1990s. And this is absolutely fabulous. We are all good in math, and we can go and sit and do a little math. And if we do the little math, and I'll tell you, the math would reveal that if we would still work the way from now as to where the companies that got into China over the 30 years, in the next 30 years, we might have just about more than 70,000-80,000 such OEMs and Japanese companies that will reside in India. That will reside in India. And as to that would reside in India, imagine the kind of prosperity in terms of economies that are going to happen in India and Japan and Asia and the rest of the world. That's being played one part of it, but the matrix is way deeper. If you look at all this OEM that the Japanese companies had in China, these are the OEM those resides mostly up on the eastern corridor of China. When I talk about the eastern corridor, that's the corridor that favors the ocean transportations of goods and carriages that is sent all over the world. That's along the South China Sea, Pacific Sea, then Japan Sea, and then it comes all the way to Singapore, to Bay of Bengal, and then from Bay of Bengal it goes to the Indian Ocean, to the Arabian Ocean, to the interval. That's how it had been done. So all this resides on the eastern part of China, and I would want to tell you, and I want to ask you, all of you, to look into these data, to find these data, and you'll see this has happened over 30 years. That's between 1950s all the way to mid 1990s, when Japanese has established all these women in that corridor, because they want the transportation to be absolutely easy and close to the ocean. So does the China equally wanted that, because that would favor from them to reach with the goods closer to the sea, so that it can be transported very easily to the other parts of the world. And that's quite obvious with anyone who would do, because if anyone is looking at doing trade and commerce, transborder trades and borders where water region is important, they would equally do alike. That's where Japan's Blue East Asia policy comes. That's where DMIC comes. We often talk about Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, and the corridor that would go all the way from Gujarat to Mumbai, all the way to Supa. That's what's the plan as of now. When we talk about Mumbai, and that's why we talk about Mumbai, and this is something that we have to observe as to why that zone has been identified, for the industrial corridor where Japan and India would collectively work together. That zone is a zone that has been mostly left behind. If you look on the map of India, we have to very categorically look at the demographics. So when you talk about the demographics, we are talking about the people demographics as to how we are scattered on over India. We see the density of population on the eastern part of the India, all the way from Calcutta, and you go to Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and all the way to Kerala. You see this demographics, and go to Maharashtra, and then to Gujarat, and then the middle state of Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh in the middle, by upon top, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and then Delhi, Rajasthan, Gurgaon, and all the way to Kashmir. If you look at this entire thing, the land that is up onto the north of the Aravallis and up by on the Konkan, all the way to the Gujarat, is a land which has been left completely barren. And that's an area where we haven't had done much at a time when the other part of the India was more densely populated. This is because of the colonialism that we had in India over the 300 years, when the British influences had made the eastern part of India south for trade and commerce, with Calcutta being at the center, connecting the enter of the rest of East to Far East Asia. But with today, it is an absolutely different figure, because that is something that I'm talking back pre-independence. But post-independence, the effect of Second World War and then the Cold War era has entirely completely changed the entire dynamics, the way the world economy will shape up in the late 20th century, and then would follow up in the 21st century, in which we are a part of it. And this is where the America, Japan, China, they have worked very closely. Germany, they have equally worked very closely as to shape the economy of the world. And in here, and as I said, the last 30 years until post-2000, this convergence of influence and opportunities have been quite neatly enjoyed by Japan, America, China being the land where the manufacturing, harvesting was done to the point such a deviation was felt in the Japan's nuclear policy, where they have worked with India and found the western corridor of India to be another alternative that is going to complement the eastern corridor of China. Now, when we talk about being complementing an eastern corridor of China, it's something that is going to happen in a one day. It takes time because it took almost 30 years, to have it had deployed into China. It wasn't done in 3 days or 3 months or 3 years or 13 years. It took 30 years for them to be doing it. So you can't just do that something really quick. And that is where this convergence of opportunities had come up, to where this is being on the roll and a new corridor in the make. We talk about the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. What is this Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor? On one side, when you look, it just feels like, that's a corridor when a lot of business will be happening. It's a corridor where the bullet train is coming. There's a lot of development in India. If this is a feasible project, there are political parties, they're making agendas, talking about different things, as their knowledge would permit with the local divergence of ideas. But now in today's world, we don't make a local divergence of ideas. Today's world, we make about international divergence of ideas, geopolitical and geoeconomic. That's where the think tanks, they are working all across the world. These are the think tanks those are sitting in Japan. These are the think tanks those are sitting in India. These are the think tanks those are sitting in Germany, all these European Union countries, and UK and US and in Russia and where not. And this is where they are looking as to how they would make work together, that they give a world of equilibrium and equality where the opportunities are enjoyed by shared values of peace and prosperity. And DMIC being such an identified zone, and this identified zone wouldn't even be there even post 2007. If you look back into if you look back into the development as to how things is developed post 2000, the relationship between India and Japan, when we had the strategic partnership, it wasn't there until 2011 when we had this FTA. So that was the time when both the governments were strategically making plans as to how this project will be deployed, because it's a project that cannot be deployed in a day or 2 days or 3 months or 3 days, as I just spoke a little while ago, and it would take time. If we look back to our memory lane, and you would remember that we used to read a lot of this in the newspaper. I can always talk with the dust, but let's talk as an abstract, and you will see that this FTA talk would start sometimes in 2007. It is just after the visit of Junichiro Koizumi, the Prime Minister of India. He was their Prime Minister of Japan in 2006. After that, Mr. Shinzo Abe was there for a little while, and he went, and then Tara also came and all. But it was just about by time that after that, this convergence of idea of FTA was actually put into the larger audience. When you talk about the audience, we talk about the audience with the people's audience, to get them to know that Japan and India have been working together. But we have to understand that between 2000 and 2006, Japan and India was already working on this area, to the point when 2007, the countries were expecting that the FTA is down in the card. And there were an issue and concern every year when the media, when the politburos, both sides would think that it's going to happen and not happen until 2011, when we actually concluded the free trade agreement and the comprehensive economic partnership agreement between Japan and India. It took 11 years to sign this pact of free trade agreement. This is one of the most important free trade agreement had happened in this century and post Cold War era. This FTA is very, very important, because when you look at this FTA, but before even having that FTA, both the governments, they have promised to each other that they would need a land where they can shape and move, and I wouldn't say move, and share opportunities. For sharing that opportunity, they have identified the DMSI corridor, the corridor that has been mostly left barren. If you go to the Run of Kutch and all, I don't know how many of you, those are my friends from Gujarat, they would know. And if you drive in Gujarat, it's absolutely barren land, and absolutely barren. When you go up down on that all the way to Maharashtra, up in the Konkan, is absolutely barren land. But we have never thought in the past that it's one side we are barren, but the other side it connects Europe, it connects Africa and the rest of the world in hours. In other words, that's the area, that's an area which was lying there dormant for thousands of years, but in reality, that land has the capacity to actually make that area of sharing an opportunity which the world had been waiting for a long time. When I say a long time, at least for the last 20 years or 30 or 40 years, when, as I said, the world shaped in a different way. As I said a little while ago, our trade and commerce hub used to be Calcutta and the eastern part of India. This went on to China, and with this new era in the 2000 and beyond, such opportunities gradually diverting to the point which is on the western coast of India. And this opportunity has been equally looked at very closely by the European Union, by the Africa, by the Americans and all, because everyone, those who understand the geopolitics of the geocon of the region, they would know that this is what ideal is suitable, because it is equally favors for them to do business with anyone across which needs transborder and transoceanic and transportation of goods and carriages. It is so expensive, when you put this goods on the water, it is not cheap. It is cheaper and when the distance are closer, and no distance would make it closer to connect to Europe, to connect to Africa, and connect to America than the eastern part of India. And obviously, it can equally do in other countries which are more closer to Europe, more closer to Africa, more closer to India. But India has the advantage of being that young nation with lot of knowledge. The knowledge pool of India is absolutely great. The people's strength, the young people's strength, to be delivering anything, we need people, and India has that to the advantage, having that people to deliver. And that is where, is an opportunity for the world to take the scope of association with India, to be work in India, so to take the intellectual ideas and opinions of India so they can work together and deliver to this world. So this move in Japan's strategy, in Japan's Blueprint strategy, might have not been observed by some of the thinkers earlier, but today all of them, they understand, and I think that is very good. Japan being always strategic, and it's been always said that Japan takes a long time to be doing their plannings. We often heard the term plan, do, check, act, PDCA, which is quite hard to how Japan would do things. Japan takes a lot of time. They take a lot of time to understand every aspect of the initiation of the project. They just don't take a project and they don't start it. If you even look at the FTA, the free trade agreement between Japan and India, they took 11 years after the time they had the strategic global partnership with India back in 2000, when Mr. Mori and Mr. Atul Bihari Vajpayee has signed that pact. A question might always open up, if that had happened, why wouldn't even have do the FTA in 3 years? That's not how it happens. Now you're talking of relocalizing geopolitical and geoeconomic and confluence to make a part for the 21st century that actually does good to everyone. You cannot just do that. Japan took 11 years to document things to the point, both of them are waiting. So does India. They will took that much of time to equally work hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, feet to feet, head to head, to work to document this thing. So they document things firm, so that once it's documented firm and once they move beyond that, they make something which is going to continue good for the humanity, for the century, for the people, for the business and industry, not in constant to Japan and India, but to the whole world as an large. And that's what the western corridor of India is. You look at Gujarat, you look at Bombay, you look at about all this region. We wouldn't even talk about this earlier, People, if you look at how the Japanese companies were actually doing into business, and if you find these findings, you will see that the Japanese companies were more on the eastern part of India, even until 2007, 2008, The companies in Kolkata, and not in Kolkata, in West Bengal, the Japanese companies were more than the companies that were in actually Gurgaon or actually in Gujarat or actually in Maharashtra, anywhere, because they were looking into actually getting that demographics dividend with more densities and more higher concentration of density in population. Because at the end of the day, when you are looking at, selling your things, you need the people to sell it. There was a time when Japan didn't have those manufacturing, they were just planning to have it, but to be having that is just as equally important. They reach out to the people. If you look back in 2009, 2010, and remember 2012, we had 454 Japanese companies in Tamil Nadu.
In Tamil Nadu, it's all around in Chennai, and there have been big talk, that China, Tamil Nadu injures a lot of Japanese companies. But it is about thinking that they injure a lot of Japanese companies, but the reality was different because Japan was actually bringing in the intellectual pull from the OEM overseas to India, and they were actually supplying the resources in India. And simultaneously, they're working with the government of India. They're working with the government of India to strategically, define those land areas where they can bring in their manufacturing units. And that is exactly what the DMIC is. Now imagine if they would bring all this manufacturing in where they would input, they need a corridor fresh to put it. So Japan has strategically done an absolutely wonderful work in this 18 years where from 2000 to 2010-11 they made absolute use of the resources to reach out to India by allocating the resources from the OEM and those locations to India along the eastern corridor where all these companies were, and generally with the influence of deputing the DMSA project, which is now a reality where now we are having this bullet train coming up and it will be ready in no time in 2023, and I know it's going to come up. There are a lot of talks in the political bureaucracies and the regional affluence of politics and divisions. They're always constantly opposed to the fact that it's not going to happen. They make a lot of comments, but it's going to happen. And any political party, whether the one those who are today having there in the center, or any other political party would come, it still happen because everyone will understand that going to do good to the country. So now with having that, brand know-how of Japan being put down into India over the last 17 years, time has come up to the point where the world is watching and the world understands very clearly that Japan, India is working very strategically to the point they are now attracting the other nations to be working equally with Japan and Indian soils. That's where the FTA comes, the European. And if you look at the European and convergence of the FTA with Japan, what had been stalled for some time until when Brexit happened. Beyond that, when the European Union went on to sign the FTA with Japan in 2017. This is absolutely great in context to the Japan-India relationship, Japan-India-European Union relationship, because all these countries will be equally looking as to be working with Japan and India, the resources, the human resources, the human capital of India, and the technological know and the excellence of Japan, which the entire world is. And if you go to a Micronesian island far deep down somewhere, they would have one of the Japanese products in their home. Not if nothing, the cell. That's the reach of Japan. So they're practically everywhere. So European Union, the Africa don't want to be left behind. The US, they don't want to be left behind of this opportunity with Japan and India is pulling up. So if we look today and this DMI, that isn't happening, we talk about the 11 smart cities along the CBIC zone. This are going to happen. Go and check it up on online. You will see all these data and all the plannings are happening, all the things are happening fast in that corridor. That corridor will be the next economic hub of the world. If you're sitting in Mumbai today, if you're sitting in Delhi today, if you're sitting in Kolkata today, if you're sitting in Telangana today, if you're sitting in Chennai today, but no other corridor will be as smart as the Western corridor, which will actually influence the world economic in the 21st century, just like the Eastern corridor of China, which has influenced the world economy for the last 40 years. That is where the political bureaucratic think that sitting in these regions, they're working constantly how they would work to put things to their advantage. The one road policy of China has been quite talked about, how that will shape up, because they also understand it's very important that they do the trade and commerce easily, and that's where that one road up on throughout the land they've been trying to drawing up so they can reach with the goods. On another side, we are trying to reach out with the goods on the ocean. It's just as true, the goods on the ocean will reach faster, and that is where India is positioned. We have all these three oceans: Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, and Arabian Sea. So when as we often get to hear and see that Japan takes a lot of time to be doing good things, this is just a good example, of how Japan in the Look East Asia policy has taken all this time to strategically work with India think tanks in a very closed environment, because they knew that this is needed of sharing the opportunity and not putting everything in one basket. And often we all get to hear about putting all eggs in one basket. And what it happens when you do, then you don't have another basket to have these eggs going on. But with Japan, they didn't do that. They understood well in advance in mid-1990s when they were slugging the Japanese economy. The boom was gone and they were already facing challenges. They realized that they have to take another alternative route, and the alternative route would be nothing better than India.
even if each one of us, those who had been actually staying in Japan as a resident, the permanent resident, if you look at the tax parameters into Japan, as when I was in Japan, it was as low as 3% back in 2002, 3, it went to 5, now to 8, now we are talking about it more. Now, are we going to accept that Japan will going to increase their taxes more and more to sustain Japanese economy at a time when the population is declining? How are they going to take care of the infrastructure that they would have there? They need money for that. That is just as true. You cannot just neglect the fact that that wouldn't be happening with money. Are we not here to believe that Japan would just take 30% of their taxes in the next 10 years to maintain their roads and bridges and the railway tracks, the buildings, the government coups and wars? That's not going to happen. So they need to make this money out of somewhere. And they would need people to be doing somewhere. There's a lot of hype right now as to how Japan would have people to come into the country to work for in the Japanese economy. And this is just on the bottom of the iceberg. We didn't even reach on the top of the iceberg. And this can only happen provided we engage people properly. We make them give this knowledge of the divergence and convergence of opportunities. Not the divergence, the convergence of this opportunity. And once they would know, we can have a better, growth altogether as Japan, as India, and all one another. So it's absolutely mandatory for each one of us, those who are listening to my take on this, because I've been very deeply, working on it. I'm always thinking about it. This is something that I love from the bottom of my heart, and I do a lot of research on this. And I found that we have to engage people. Japanese excellence is quite talked about. Japanese excellence, business excellence, and manufacturing, service industries. This is the guidelines of excellence all across the world. It's about Japanese language. A lot of times, we've been told that if you don't learn Japanese language, you don't get a job in the Japanese companies. In India, you don't get a job in Japanese companies in other countries. You don't get a job in Japanese companies in Japan. Well, when it comes to being in Japan, I would agree to some constant, because when you live in a country, you need to speak the language of the country, because that's how it is. You have to obey the way, their norms, their compliances, their regulations, the way their business runs, and we have to be a part of it. And for that, we have to agree. There are no exception, and we must honor that with absolute vigor, and we must accept and do this because we've been working in Japan. But that's being in Japan, a country which is a country of 125 million, not 127. They've lost 2 million people in the last 2 years. This is something that we really need to go and look at the census and data as to see how the people declining has already started in Japan. So we have 125 million people. That's one part of Japan. And another part, Japan contribute to the entire world, contribute the rest of the 7 billion people that reside on the face of the planet. So now if we can understand the Japanese compliances, now if you understand the Japanese excellence processing, that is so useful for any country in the world. Now, with the demographic advantage that we have to India, where we are global, truly global in nature, we contribute back in America, we contribute in Europe, we contribute in Japan, Australia, Central Asia. Every year we are contributing. We are contributing because we contribute because our education is strong in India. We contribute because we speak freely all across the world. We speak a language which is a language of the world, has been incubated into the Indian soil through the 300 colonialism, which is English language, and we do this very well. That has made us absolutely communicator, global business communicator, and that is absolutely good. So we have that advantage. And I think that's where Japan and India is looking at to leverage that advantage more deeper by working in Indian soil, by engaging human resources from India to actually outsource that excellence to the world. And that's absolutely a possibility. There's an absolute possibility. Go to the Indian government of India's website, the skill development website, and you see Indian government is welcoming big time as to how they can incubate the Japanese excellence process like Gemba, Kaizen, TPM, TQM into Indian modeling, so that they can actually put both in the service and the manufacturing industry. Now, when we talk about this being putting in the service and the manufacturing industry, I mean, like, you can put through the length and the breadth of the country, because Make in India is the call of India. Make in India is the call of India. This sits in the table of all the bureaucrats all over the irrespective of region, irrespective of borders. Even a person sitting in China, a person sitting in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, you talk about any countries here, France, Germany, UK, you talk about South Africa, any country, Kenya, Uganda, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, Honduras, Mexico, Peru, Argentina, Bolivia. You talk about what any countries, they are already aware of this Make in India, and everybody wants to be a part of this Make in India initiative, where they are looking at gradually to come to India, to work in India, to manufacture in India. That's exactly what Japan and India has put out together to the world. Now, I would want to ask you if you know of any other country to which India has promised contributing to land for manufacturing hub. And you will see Japan is the only country where India has actually allocated an inter-region, a region which is to the advantage of trans-border, transoceanic trade opportunities of trade and commerce. It has been given to the Japan. That means something. That means absolutely something. That means absolutely something to the Make in India. Now, when we talk about that, it's absolutely something to the Make in India, because that's where we can engage India with that excellent skilling, because these are these companies that will be setting up on the western corridor of India. These are the Japanese companies, those will be manufacturing big time on the eastern corridor of India. They will make hundreds and thousands and millions of jobs. And these are the people, those will be working in India. These are the Indians, those who are working. You're not expecting all those 125 million Japanese people to come in India to be working. They would be working in India. That's where the Indian human capital, human knowledge resources come. That's where the capital, human resource capital of the English language, that's where the human capital of Japanese excellence come. So now, if we take a strategy to engage and educate us back in India on Kaizen, on Gemba, and all this to not only do good to those things that are going to happen, and they're going to happen very fast. We are sitting here in 2019, and I'm talking in 2019, but this will gradually go and become more and more by 2025, 2030, and 2031, by 40, when we have a full-grown economy, and we will be called most like a more like capitalist country, because we will be a very rich country. And when we become a rich country, the participation of Japan would be the most vital and the more confluencing and the influencing on the Indian demographics, which it will not only do good to only the Japanese business, but equally it will do good to all the businesses from the other zone, those who equally participating in India. This comprises all the European Union companies. They'll be all equally coming to India, because they'll be also equally working with the Japanese companies. They would be needing people, those who understand Kaizen. These are the people, those who understand Gemba. They would not look into, how much Japanese language they would speak. Japanese language, as I said, is needed for us, those who are going to live in Japan and who want to work in Japan. That's where we need, because that's their workplace, and we must learn it with no exception. Because if we have accepted to be there, to be working there from the world headquarters, we have to. But then again, as I said, there's only 125 million people on one side, and there's another 7 billion people on the other part of the world. They are in some way or another influenced by the contribution, when I say contribution, positive contributions of the Japanese science and technology and economy, the overseas development assistance loans, for the infrastructures and so on and so forth. The contribution of Japan is monumental, positive, which has given the people of the world a very peaceful harmony and things that have only brought good to each one of these countries and in the rest of the world. So India, when we look at talking about India, when we look at talking about Make in India, a European company from France, Germany, or Lithuania, or from Latvia, and all this company from Spain, and all this company, when they would be working with the Japanese company in the Indian soil, they would need to understand the excellence driven by Japanese parameters. And so as far, in Africa, the AEG corridors. The AEG corridor is an absolutely very important corridor. Through this corridor, Japan and India combined it together collectively. They have taken an approach to skill the people of Africa. They have taken an oath to do better infrastructures in America. And what does that mean? That means exactly the same. When we talk about the skilling, because we would need people which are other, part of the world, a continent in Africa, which equally have talented resources. The people, those are absolutely intelligent. And you skill these people, and you put these infrastructures into places. So that area of the entire Arabian Ocean that converged from all the way to the run of the Kutch and through the southern peripheral, the northern peripheral of the Arabian Ocean to the eastern coast of Africa would be absolutely the advantage, where equally all the countries on the eastern part of Africa would be enjoying the same opportunity by, if you can call it the marriage of opportunities, where they'll be equally working with Japan and India on the Indian side, and if they're working on the African side, they'll be working in tandem with Japan and India in the central. So it's absolutely important for us to understand what is that we need to do today. Is it about industry? Is it about business? Is it about an industry? Or is it about people? And I have always believed, and I continue to believe, that it is all about people. It is about educating people. So time has come that we understand this very deep down, very, very deep down we understand this, so that we start educating people, not in numbers, not in units, not in hundreds, not thousands. We have to educate and teach in hundreds and thousands and millions of Indians in India who can be a part of this new opportunity, the opportunity we call an opportunity of excellence, the opportunity of being a part of the Make in India, where Japan and India is working to the core to facilitate Japanese excellence on the Indian side, which will be enjoyed by the citizens of India. Those will be working not only for Japan and India, they'll be working for all these European Union countries, those who enjoy, as I say, 66% of the world resources. And a part of this world resources will come back to India. And a part of that world resources will come back to India. And if you're working on the age corridor, a part of that will come to India, a part of that will go to Japan. The opportunity is monumental. So in English, with an excellence. Excellence is a thing that we have to really understand what the subject is. This we have to build to sustainable mechanism. Yes, we have to make intermittent arrangement of building of excellence with the move of the industry, because the industry needs people, but we have to take an alternative method. There's an alternative method of grooming excellence through the school system, through the college system, and this has to be taken way advanced in our child's development. And if you do that, we can actually put something together. When I say we're together, Japan, India together, which will give a wonderful life of contribution to the entire world. So when you look at the DMIC from the ground, when you look at Japan from the ground, when you look at India as the ground, sometimes, all these things gets diluted because we don't see this. But when you start looking up from the top, you look a larger area. As you know, when you're up on the cockpit of an aircraft, I was a pilot before. I don't know how many of you know, I used to fly, and I used to see the sky up and from the top. And when you see from the top, you see so much far. But when you see from the ground, you can see until that where the sky ends. So we have to make a choice between if we want to see until where the sky ends, or we have to make a choice to see it from the top so we can see the larger dimensions of the engagement. And this engagement only diffuses and misses up with the horizon. And horizon, where the horizon doesn't meet, is a horizon that goes to infinity. This is something that we have done. And once we understand this, then I think we'll think in a little different way. So each one of you, to whom that I would hear to this video and look into this, I'm just sharing my opinions, the way I look into it. And I look into this because this I think to be right and correct, and I will continue to look into this. And I'm also exploring to try to understand there's some other way to look at it. But when I look into it, I look this opportunity as one of the greatest opportunities happening on the face of the planet. The greatest opportunity happening on the face of the planet, because we can give this human capital from India at a time when Japan is slogging with the human capital. We read about human capital going less in Japan. We read about it and go less by 30 million people in the next 25 years. And if that's going to happen, we can give Japan the 30 million people in India. I think we can give it way more, because this is not about those 30 million people, but it's about way more this Indian people, those who can contribute to the Japanese business in India. They can contribute to the Japanese business in Europe. They can contribute to the Japanese business in India, and they can contribute to Japanese business in America. And when not, that possibility is there, just like the way we have contributed to the whole world through our English languages. So world is going through the transformation. World is going through a very, very rapid transformation. As I said a little while ago, that before it took 30 some plus years for Japan to make the 27,000 way in China. But now with the internet technology, with the AI, artificial intelligence, IoT, augmented realities and what not that we have on the technology, where it's basically a system within us, where the world is so connected that you don't even spend a micro fraction of a second to reach to another part of the world. In other words, my message would be, in the next phase, the move of this industrial revolution will be more faster than it had been in the past. And it will be so fast where Japan and India will take a lead and active participation. So for all of us, if we think of this active participation of these two countries, my suggestions or my note to all of you, those who treat me as a friend, an associate, or as an opponent, or as an enemy, whatever way you look at me and whatever way you think about me, my message is very simple. I've been very honest about what I've been talking. I'm being very, very honest about what I'm talking. I'm talking my heart out, I've been talking my heart out completely. I'm talking my heart out completely as I'm saying. Take me the way as an enemy, as a friend, an associate, and whatever you want to take me. But let's do understand, this is a people's opportunity. So the more success we get if we as a people trying to engage, more we'll succeed if we can unify together as a group and work together, just like the way we have 28,000 Indians in Japan. Find a way to connect together and not having 50 different groups. I'm sorry to say, and that is actually what the reality is. Try to find a way, talk together, become friends. It's time that has come that you have to talk together, because all these 28,000 people that of Indian origin that we have in Japan, and even out of that, even 5,000 of them, those who are living there as a permanent resident, can bring 50,000 opportunities for Japan, India, by just being there in Tokyo, by having there in Osaka, by being there in Sendai, in Nagoya, Ranad. We are all sitting there. We can work with all them by connecting together as human-to-human relationship. It is very important. It is not about industry, business-to-industry relationship. Once we do human-to-human relationship by educating us, the knowledge is the most important aspect of communication, and that knowledge is what is going to play the most important factor in the new industrial revolutions. And in this industrial revolution, if each one of you, those who are Indian, those who are there in Japan, and willing to come forward to unite as one and not segregate it. We don't segregate things. We segregate things, what is needed to be segregated, but we need to put things together. That's to make a better world. That's what actually the recycling is. We need to recycle to unify. It is very important. Recycle to unify is my term, the way I look into it. And if we do that, us, the 28,000 Indians that we have being in Japan, we can actually contribute big time to the people engagement. I tell you, once we connect big time to the people engagement, we'll automatically connect business and industry. And we don't have to merely wait on when CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, would come to Japan. We would not have to wait on only when ASSOCHAM, the Associate Chambers of Commerce and Industry of India, would come to Japan. We would not have to wait for FIA, Federation of Indian Industry, to come to Japan. We don't have to wait to ACMA, Automobile Company Association of India, to come to Japan, because none of these organizations actually truly has their entities or identity in Japan. These are the entities which are huge and not, and they're all in India, and that's absolutely good. But we have to understand that this goodness can become better once we are localized to the area as to where we live. So if it's for ASSOCHAM or the FICCI or the CIO or the NASCOM, if they would really want to do, they have to really do long, steeper engagement from the roots and just not been walking on the surface. And I think we are walking too much off on the surface. Walking too much on the surface is a lost opportunity. We have to walk from the roots. I completely believe that we have time, and if we make a sustainable mechanism where, as I said, recycle to unite, and work together, such opportunities would actually convert if we work in Tokyo. It absolutely has become evident that we do that. It's good to promote culture. There's no wrong in promoting culture, because culture is the root of everything. It's good to promote food. It is good to have dances. It's good to have everything. It's good to have a lot of fun. But it is also equally good to have all this convergence of people to connect. These are the people, those are the people who do business. This is something that needs to happen in Japan, across the cities. We have Indians in Tokyo, we have Indians in Yokohama, we have Indians in Sendai, in Osaka, in Hamamatsucho, in Sapporo, in Okinawa. Why not we have it? So find a way. And if anyone would want to take a lead, who can speak for India, identify those people, make a convergence of these people to come, those who take lead. It's absolutely evident that some people has to take lead. Identify these people, those really want things to happen, and these people are there in Japan. I completely know we have a lot of people, those are in Japan. I want to take the name of Mr. Yogendra Puranik, just to give an example. He is there. Go talk to this person. He can talk for all of us. Go and talk to Bhuvan Theory. He can talk for all of us. Go and talk to, so many people out there, those who can talk to us, and just not sit and, just wave the time. Try to identify the industry corridor where you want to engage. It's very easy. It's not that difficult. We can do that through very simple analysis. Once we do this and once we do that, then we will bring this contingent back from Japan to India, and we don't have to actually wait in the hands of one of this industry corridor from India would go to Japan. Because if they would go to Japan and if they would exchange messages on the business card, which is good, which we do, but how much of opportunity that actually fetches to the larger engagements of Japan that can bring it into India. Japan is small, but Japan is also huge. We have 125 million people. How much of it that we have actually, let us ask question to each one ourselves. And you will see that we haven't had done any. If you go to embassy, and if you go to one of the, and when I talk about embassy, the embassy of India in Tokyo, we see the same Indian faces every time sitting in an auditorium. Where are all these 28,000 people? Where are these 5, 6, 7,000 permanent resident Indians? Where are these people? I mean, these people are permanent resident because they have lived in Japan. They have lived their lives the way you need to live in Japan. They understand Japan more than anyone else. These are the people, those who live with the Japanese people, eat with Japanese people, sleep with Japanese people, do everything with the Japanese people. So we have a big contingent, an army sitting there in Japan, and we are still failing to reach to this army. We are still failing to reach to this army, and time has come that we need to find mechanism to reach out to them. And that's what I'm saying. Segregating and reshuffling the West back, and you work together as a unity. And if we so do as work on the unity, we wouldn't have to wait to find who would represent us and how this information can be routed. This can be absolutely routed. We are going through a wonderful time in history where India, Japan's our global strategic partner. Joint Statement 2025 has already been there for us, and we know exactly the direction these two countries would give direction to the rest of the world. I believe time has come that we understand that. We are in 2019. Let's make a plan, And I tell you, please let all of us make a plan with no walls between us, with complete transparency, with complete trust. Because there are some people, they really love to work for Japan and India. They really want, each one of us, not some people, each one of us do. But as I say, try to find these people, try to identify people, those who can actually talk for both these countries, for all of us, and then all the other people, they unite together, and they can bring this opportunity back to Japan. This will do a lot good to all those Indians, those who are also living in Japan, because an opportunity which was otherwise been undermined will flourish. 5,000 people, those are permanent residents, 6 or 7, I don't have the number on me. I imagine that many number would be there, other than those who are working visa and other visa. They will be equally, will be resident of Japan in the days ahead, because that's where Japan is welcoming people. Each one of you would be one of this person who's going to live in Japan for the rest of the life. And if you so want to live there for the rest of the life, why do we wait anymore? Why do we have to wait? Let us unify. Let us go. Let us remove the walls of who is better or who is worse and how much each one of us can do. Let us do together. Let us try to find who can do it as far as us. Try to identify these people, and once you identify, let's work in Japan. Each one of you going to help the Japanese business big time. Lot of wrongdoings is happening. In India. A lot of this Japanese business, those who are coming to India, these are the small ones. They are losing their businesses. They are going back to Japan with a lot of bad ideas as well, getting in the hands of the touts and the cheats. This can also be equally stopped, provided we actually cater them in. In other words, there are two parts, there are two factors to how we cater. One is to cater it from the surface, and the other is to cater it from the roots. So each one of you are sitting in the roots, and now we are in a situation we're trying to cater from the surface. So why don't we all go down to the roots to reach out to each one of these people by unifying, by agendas, by corridors, by seminars, by meetings, by propaganding it on the newspaper. You can have this propaganda going on Japan Times, then Yomiuri Shimbun, so many Kyoto News, and there's so many on there that are there. It just takes 100 yen to each one of us. If we pay that 100 yen, I'm talking about 100 yen, that's about $1, not more than that. And if we pay that $1, 100 yen each one of us, think how much, even 500 of you to start off with you, to put that 100, and that money is enough to have us upon this newspaper every day. And if we have this as a newspaper, as a unit together to have it, and it's no wrong that we are information of a unified India would go down to each and every corner, to each and every citizen of Japan. This is absolutely possible. I'm not talking about having this in the newspaper only. One day we can do it every day. Can we not, each one of us, contribute 3,000 yen a month? And if we can contribute 3,000 in a month, 10% can contribute 30,000, 100, 300,000. And when you call 100, 300, and 1,000, and that's 3 million. You know what's happening? We are up on the news, national dailies. We are up on Nikkei magazines. It can go everywhere. That much money, that much contribution needed, to make the face of India to the global audience. The good thing is that the Japanese people, they love India, they like India, they love the food of India. They are trying to find a way to how to reach to India. They are putting every effort at their side to find who these people who can actually assist them to contribute to get them to that bigger, larger Japan-India opportunity where the leaders of both the countries are putting down together. And I think that's where, as I said, always we have to remember that government is on top and we are on the bottom. They are the ones who show resistance, but it's us, the people, we have to work for it. And once we work for it, then we go all the way up to the government and we can work for the government. Time has come. We have to understand my message to everyone would be to see how we can go and do that. So with this, to the end of the episode, I would like to thank you for listening to me, and I hope some of it might have made sense to you. And then again, a lot of you might be thinking, and I'm talking too much, or I'm talking too less. But I want to make one thing very, very sure to all of you. I love to work for India, Japan more than anything that has ever existed. I live, I breathe for it, and I keep on continuing working for it. I've been working for it for the last 12, 13 years. There's a lot of lessons that I've learned over the years, and the lessons can be daunting, can be very frustrating, and at times can be very intimidating, can be with a lot of sorrow and a lot of pain, but I haven't had at any point of time come across. There's a lot of friends of me, those who have been in Japan, those who know me over the years, and they've been knowing me doing this, and I'll continue to do this, but yes, I'll still continue whether in my own capacity or as a team. So anyone who would like to be a part of us together, I want to tell you that I'm with all of you. I just want to call away, just give me a call and just let me know, Raj, let's do it together. I want to work together as a whole because time has ripened. We need to reach out. All my friends, we need to reach out. We cannot just wait anymore. We cannot just wait anymore. We need to reach out. If we are to find a mechanism to go and talk to the embassy and to try to find the list of people, those who are Indians and live in India. Embassy of India has all the list of all these Indians, this 28,000 Indians, those who live in Japan. And we can take the assistance of the Embassy of India and we can talk with the political wing, we can talk with the trade, we can talk with the ambassador of India, we can talk with everyone in the embassy and unify together, tell that this is something that is needed to be done. How can we reach? Let the embassy help us reach to all of these people. And that is possible. And once we do that, a new revolution will start, a new revolution for goodness, a new revolution for prosperity. Revolution doesn't necessarily mean that we defend and we do something to obstruct and we get this now. Revolution is also to be saying to be doing something good, for already the good has already been laid down by both the leaders of this world. We are blessed to have a great Prime Minister in India who is not only the leader of India, but he is the leader of the leaders of the world. When I talk about the leaders of the world, whether you go to US, to Japan, to all the way to the forest of the Antarctic, anyone would actually consider Narendra Modi to be the finest leader the world has produced in post-Cold War and in the new era, which is called the new era, the 21st century. So we have a great leader. We have a great leader in Japan, Mr. Shinzo Abe, who is a good friend to Mr. Narendra Modi, and he understands exactly how important it is for Japan to work with India, and he's putting every effort to make sure that he puts his dream into reality. And as I said, there'll be Politburo sitting both sides in India and Japan and other countries. They would have their opinion, and they have their opinions also in Japan. But that opinion will be all there because those opinions are opinions very much to the locals. So one is a local opinion and another is a global. That's where the geopolitics and the geoeconomics comes. And I think that where in the think tank they're working very, very nicely. So with this, I want to come to the end of my talk today. Thank you for
listening to me, and I hope you all would think some of the thoughts that I've shared with you with a positive note. And if you would, you can very well, you can reach out to me, or if you want me to reach out to you, I am ready to reach out to anyone who would give me a call, because I have learned to believe it is about me who has to reach out. If I have to wait for others to reach out to me, maybe I'm just thinking that I'm too great. That's not who I am. I am working for this very deep down with all my heart and soul. So please call me. I'll be there in any way and everything that I can do to assist in, by talking, by contributing, by anything. I want to do it for India. So please give me a call. I'm just one call away. I'll be there. I'll be there. I'll be there. Thank you very much, and have a very good day. Bye-bye.